scoop myself.
Welcome everyone to the Swansea.com stadium for Rhian Wilkinson's squad announcement press conference ahead of Denmark and Italy in the Women's Nations League. Who would like to kick us off?
Thanks. Rhian, good afternoon. We've seen you and members of the FAW team up the summit of UEFA Mount Snowdon. Just another day in the life of a Wales manager, I guess.
Yeah, it was. That was a fun Thursday. I think while we were struggling through some of the tougher bits, I thought it's better than being in an office. So I burnt the back of my legs and had a great day on the mountains. Pretty special.
Yeah, but you didn't break a sweat from what I could see.
It was a long trip up because we did so much filming. So it was actually quite painful for all of us. But it was also a really special day. So I was glad to have done that.
And it's just another small step along the way now towards the Euros, which is getting ever closer. We'll talk about the Nations League in just a moment, but that carrot of Switzerland, that excitement is building up very nicely now, isn't it?
Yeah, my staff is doing a great job getting ahead. We obviously have this camp, then we have small training camps, then we've got our preparation, and we're into the Euros. So we've got to be looking ahead while keeping the players firmly focused on the two very important games coming up.
How hard is it to keep those players focused on the here and now with such a big occasion coming up?
It's pretty easy because I haven't named my squad yet, and they know that. It's a lot of... there's a bit of different intensity that will be a reality of this camp. No matter how much I try and sort of take the air out of that moment, they know that some of them are potentially going to have, dreams come true if they make the squad, whereas others who've given so much to this qualification journey might not be with us right at the end. So it's going to be a tough camp for that.
So the Nations League games, as important as they are by themselves, they also play a bit of an audition, don't they, for the European Championships? Yeah,
and I think everyone knows that all our games leading up to this training camp have played a part in making or helping me make my decisions. But there are players that are still right on the edge, and we obviously have injuries, and injuries happen in football. So, yeah, anything can happen.
And if you were to avoid relegation from League A, that would provide the biggest boost, wouldn't it, going into those European Championships in Switzerland?
Of course, and we've always talked about using this League A campaign as a Nations League A campaign as making sure that they're first and foremost a preparation for the Euros, but at no point in time were they being sacrificed for results. In terms of we wanted to play our way, but equally, having success on the pitch is also part of the learning. So we've pushed for that, and we're on 2 points. We're a ways off some of the other teams in our group. However, it is still mathematically possible, and we feel that, and we're looking forward to going into those two games knowing that I don't think it's at all impossible to get points from each of those games. So, yeah, we're looking forward to them.
Roughly, in your head, how many places in that squad for Switzerland have been determined, and how many are up for grabs? Are you in a position to say that numerically how many? Yeah,
probably around 20 I'm clear on, and then there's 3 that can go either way on both sides, and that's probably where most coaches sit at this point, because there's always little niggling injuries, don't know where they're going to go, and there's obviously players that have been on the cusp of your planning, so those will probably go right up to the wire.
Really, yeah, so even after this Nations League campaign, you might still be undecided on those places up for grabs?
I probably won't be undecided, but injuries do dictate some of those decisions, and I can't pretend they don't. So, everyone is aware that we've got some players that are carrying some knocks, and I'll give everyone as much time as possible to give me the biggest headache right up to the date.
One of those, of course, is Sophie Ingle. How is Sophie doing, and is she on course to make the Euros?
Sophie's doing really well, and a big thank you to Chelsea. I think her return to play, her recovery has been incredibly well managed by them. Obviously, she's leaving, so that commitment to their player has been really appreciated, and she's doing really well. She's on course. She's not part of this camp because I thought it interfered with her return to play. She will join us after Denmark. So she will be part of this camp, but not rostered. So she's doing very well.
And of course, it's been announced that she's leaving Chelsea. Just a word about her contributions to that club and the success they've had over the last few years.
Yeah, I think. I think it's better asked to Chelsea, but from the outside, she was on. I was the assistant coach for Team GB in Tokyo, and she was on that team, and her steady leadership reflects many things, but also how she plays. She's one of these players that often goes unnoticed because of how consistent she is in her performances and how important she is to any team she plays for in terms of keeping the ball moving, linking different units on the field. And then that consistency of character is so important for leadership, and she's demonstrated that throughout her career.
You have some players back who had limited game time for various reasons in the last Nations League window. Just Fishlock back after missing the trip to Sweden. She was a late withdrawal for that. Obviously, having Jessa under cap is a huge boost for everyone. Is it a case now, from between now and July, of just limiting her game time again?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm very fortunate. My players are with clubs that look after them first, and it's I loan them with the national team, and they've got huge ambition with the Euros right around the corner. So there's always a balance of how much do I need them in camp, how much do I need to play them, which is important for their load and their connection with the team, with their return to play, or how do they feel the best possible physically going into the Euros. So it's a fine line, and we have to work with the clubs with that. And Jess could easily have come to Sweden with us, but we felt like that was a trip that wasn't necessary. Same with Sophie Engel. She could easily be coming with us to Denmark, but I don't see the reason why she should travel when we interrupt her return to play. So these players are all on course. They're tracking well. We had a meeting yesterday where my medical team said that my entire squad is ready to go, ready to play. That being said, there's always sort of little details that we'll look at, and that's what I mean. Like we're preparing for the Euros, but we also have 2 qualification games that are very important coming up. So those will definitely impact my decisions.
Katie Barton is back after missing the previous 2 Nations League matches, and a different sort of striker, a different sort of option she gives you compared to, say, Carrie Jones or Hannah Kane, your other forwards.
Yeah, or Elise Hughes. Yeah, I mean, Kaylee's been fantastic. She had an injury. She's annoyed that she's not in the 23, which is what you want from your players. Kaylee is coming in as a player that's coming back into the squad, and I don't want to push her, which is nice. It's nice when I'm the one holding a player back. They don't feel that it's nice, but I think Kaylee showed her qualities through Nations League B, but equally into Nations League A, and has someone who's historically been demonstrated her abilities, and so I'm not wanting to push her at this point.
It's great to see Kerry Holland in the squad, because when we think back to that Denmark game in Cardiff, I think we all feared the worst when she was stretching off. Thankfully, that wasn't the case. So it's quite apt that she's ready to go against the Danes.
Yeah, and that was a very painful injury, and I think everyone, especially when you have a major tournament coming up, when you see a player go down in that much pain, you always, unfortunately, think the worst. But she was fortunate. We were fortunate. She took a knock. It was painful. Liverpool did a great job with her return to play, and she was quickly back on the pitch. And I think she was player of the match 2 weeks after that injury for Liverpool. So testament to her.
You never want to sort of put your players in cotton wool, and you would always encourage them, I'm sure, to be fully committed into tackles, into 50-50s. But with the Euros around the corner, it's a fine line, isn't it?
Of course, but I think players know it as well. If you don't commit to a tackle, you're more likely to get injured. And the good news is when a player's on the pitch, they're not thinking about the Euro. They just get into the normal mode of things. Part of the challenge of having a summer tournament is that the season is finished, and you need your players fit and strong and healthy. We do have players in North America that are in the middle of their seasons, but a lot of our players are out of season right now, and that's something that we've got to make sure that whenever we get them opportunities to be in training, the 77 tournament that's happening right now, maybe I'm not the same as other coaches, but some of my players don't get much game time, and it's always a risk-reward thing, but equally there's nothing like football to get you ready for football, and so we can't protect them. They have to be fit.
I don't think we've spoken to you since the the bad news about Laura O'Sullivan-Jones missing out on the Euros, that is a real sickener for someone who has given so much
Absolutely.
to Welsh football over the last decade or so.
Yeah, I thank you for asking. I think that there are players that grab the headlines with their injuries because they're front and center. Laura has 70-odd caps representing Wales, has been an integral piece of the success of this team. Every time I name a roster and her name's not on it, I know that her heart has broken. She's not happy just sitting as the second or third string keeper, but she does it for the betterment of the team, and she has done it with such grace and leadership. And then to see her have that injury was really heartbreaking. She is a phenomenal woman who's going to do great things in the sport once she's back. But it really is one of those reminders that things can change very quickly, and we will miss her in Switzerland, and we hope that she'll be joining us in a different way.
I was about to say, could she be involved in a different capacity because of the influence that she has with the squad?
Yeah, she will be there. She will be there. I think there's certain players that, whatever their role in Switzerland, whether they're on the team, whether they're a training player, whether they can't be there, have to be in Switzerland in one capacity or another.
Rhian, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hey, Rhian, can I just ask you a little bit more about Sophie Ingle, if I may, in terms of, you said she's on course. What does that practically mean for you in terms of, how you're able to use her, obviously not in the games, but incorporate into the training camps you've got, everything you need to do where prying eyes can't see, in the potential to have her there with you in Switzerland. So what does on course mean?
Well, actually, it's vague on purpose because she's not been in with us for a while. And so she's had fantastic reports from Chelsea in terms of how she's training. She's back with the group. The problem is that Chelsea's not training anymore. So I think it's really important to get her back with the team for her own self, but also for the team. Integration's not an issue, obviously. Sophie is Wales in many ways. But how she's training, how she's progressing, we will have to see and get our own medical team across it. But in terms of coming back from a major injury, she is ahead of markers at this time. That's what I know, but I haven't seen her train either. And until I have, I think that's a hard thing to answer.
I'll ask a very ignorant, blunt question. What is the likelihood of potentially on the June 19th you being able to pick her, but percentage-wise at this moment in time?
Well, again, I haven't seen her, so I'll just say 50-50 because she's ahead of schedule in terms of what is schedule. ACLs are vastly different depending on the athlete. And I don't always think ahead of schedule is great if you skip steps, but I trust that Chelsea's done everything properly, and I think that she is doing very well. But, how I need my medical team to have a look at her. I need to see her. I need to have, clear conversations with her before I make that decision. But she is doing well. I don't know. Sorry for being vague. I don't think I can be more clear.
No, that was perfect. And I deliberately kind of being ignorant because it's obviously it's a huge talking point.
Well, we all are, unless someone here is a physio or a doctor. I mean, we all hear about these injuries, and they're just so different. I remember Christine Lilly, the American player, coming back in 3 or 4, something insane, And then I've spoken to her since, and she was in agony. I don't want that. Then you see players that take 2 years, and I don't know what the right or wrong is. It's really outside my realm of expertise. So I do want her back, but not at the risk of Sophie Ingle's knee.
Jess Fishlock, in terms of her ability to sort of create magic, legendary status, non-Welsh people who they might be following the Lionesses, but they all know who Jess Fishlock is. How do you use that mystique and legendary status of Jess, just being in and around the squad, and perhaps more, off the field as much as on the field?
I don't think I have to use it. She just is. I mean, on the field, I think every nation we play against prepares for Jess Fishlock and how she plays. And even then, she's one of these players that she'll just do something else if you stop her doing one thing. But off the field, what she does is she demonstrates best practice in everything. So it's not a surprise to anyone that she's had the career she's had, but also the longevity. She doesn't skip anything. And you see young players, they don't want to cool down, they don't want to take an ice bath, they're not doing, like, she does not skip a detail. And when you have someone of that caliber who's played for that long, who's played for that many championships and all the accolades, never skip something, what's your excuse? And when you have that and she's not alone, right? Like, if you think of my senior leadership with Wales, that's what I have. I have the top professionals in the game demonstrating. So I don't have to say anything. They show them every day. And you can't imagine a young player skipping recovery when you've got sort of a Sophie Ingle, a Jess Fishlock, Angharad James, all these like big names of the game doing everything right. So I think I'm very lucky in that.
Just a last one from me, if I may. How much would you have preferred, or perhaps not at all, to have had a friendly game after these Nations League matches? A friendly game, that 7 to 10 period out from the first game. Is that an ideal thing for you, or are you happy that the fact is that you've got 2 very competitive matches 3-4 weeks out? What would have been your preference? Because some nations obviously are going for a warm-up game, 5, 6, 7 days out from the first game. What would have been your preference?
Yeah, I think if we'd found the right opposition, to have had a game at home would have been really nice, and it wasn't associated to Nations League A. It would have been a standalone, and the FAW wanted that. So we were one of the later nations to qualify, and the reality is the options that we had available to me, I wasn't interested in. And that isn't meaning to be disrespectful. It has to be a very specific type of game. So an example is we were offered a phenomenal team from Africa to play, which was exciting. But they are not preparation for a Euros. And so I made, this was absolutely my call. And that's something that I learned as a player, but also as a coach in other countries, is if you don't have the right opposition, don't force it. So it would have been nice, of course, to play at home one more game, but equally we're playing this game coming up in Swansea. This is my first time playing here. This is what we talk about when people complain that Wales doesn't represent the whole of Wales because they don't play across the country. We've been doing that. We've been to Wrexham, we're in Cardiff, we're in Llanelli, we're now in Swansea. And, I'm sure a lot of the public are saying that because they want to see the men, but the women are doing it. So let's make sure this Swansea game represents the send-off that people have asked for. A few people are annoyed I'm not having the send-off game. But equally, I think we are in this very important game for us at home versus Italy. That could be the make or the break of whether we stay in Nations League A. Thank you. Yeah.
Hey, Rhian.
Hi.
Just on Jess's injury, Seattle listed it as a leg injury. Is it the same sort of issue that's been bugging her now for a couple of months, or is this a completely different issue altogether?
I think it's a leg injury. I think, look, Seattle, Jess is a Seattle player, and she is obviously a Welsh legend. She's had a few little niggling things, and I think Seattle has gone above and beyond at listening and supporting Jess and Angharad and Lily in terms of their ambitions for the Euros. And whatever they list her as is what she is. And I also haven't had eyes on her for at least a month and a half, so I'll leave it up to them to qualify what she's got.
There's a couple of players who have their club futures up in the air coming into this camp. Alice is being released from Southampton, Poppy of Blackburn is really uncertain about future, and then the speculation of a Hannah at Leicester as well. You've been a player yourself. How difficult is it sometimes to come into camp when your long-term future is a little uncertain?
It is a challenge, and I think we'd be naive to say that that's not on the back of their minds. Also, this challenge of do you try and sign before a Euros, or do you sign afterwards? And then there's the pressure, well, if I don't play them at the Euros, then do they? It is a really complicated thing. I don't think agents are always helpful. They can be very challenging, but equally, this is where they need to earn their money, which is that players are at their most vulnerable at this time, where they're certain their future is not as clear. And I hope very much third parties that are supporting my athletes are giving them the space they need to just play and taking care of the things that that are distracting off of the field.
One final one for me. Looking back at it in this Nations League group, obviously a great draw away in Sweden, but that Italy win against Denmark means realistically you probably need to go out to Denmark and get a win. There's definitely an element of pressure to that, but how much do you relish that pressure?
First, what a fantastic group we're in. I mean, the fact that everyone is still sort of within touching distance. We're, you know, quite a few points off in 4th place, but equally it's still within our grasp. And that's all you want from these campaigns, is that there's still that possibility. And when you talk about pressure, I mean, great. What an opportunity. I don't think we would have expected this when we started our Nations League A campaign, that we would still have 2 games to play for. As in meaningful games, and that we could actually still do something. So we love this opportunity. We like that we're in this position, and I think we've always positioned this pressure as excitement, because we know it's not going to get easier at the Euros. So I know I'm looking forward to it, and I can only guess that the team is as well. Thank you, Jill.
Hi, Rhian.
Hi.
Obviously, I want to talk about the senior players in your squad, but I just wanted to ask you about the youngsters that have come through, especially in this campaign. You think of Maisie Davis, who's taken to international football like a duck to water.
Yeah.
Safia Middleton Patel was outstanding against Sweden. How proud are you at just how much they've made the most of this opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, Marit got her first cap as well, and we have a lot of other young players that have come through and been part of our camps and just haven't quite made that next step. I'm firstly really grateful for the pathway that we're still sort of grinding out here in Wales for our young players through the academies, but our youth systems. I think we know things are tracking when these young players are coming through our system, and this is that first generation now that's moving through. It's probably controversial to say, but I would hazard that some of our Welsh young players are maybe undervalued in playing in England or playing abroad. They're not maybe the first ones to come in off the bench. We've got Maisie, Marit, they're all sort of Scarlett as well, like making the bench but not quite getting on the field. And then you see them play against Sweden or Denmark or Italy, and how composed and how ready they are for senior team football. And I think that it's not a surprise. They're ready. They're just waiting for their opportunity. And I just like how they're brave enough to show up. And I think that is a testament to the team, because when you're young, less experienced, if you think that your senior, more experienced players are going to get after you or yell at you every time you make a mistake, you play within yourself and contained. And if you look at the performances we've had from our young ones, they make mistakes. So do our more experienced players, but they're trusting enough in my staff, myself, and their teammates that we will support them no matter what. And when you've got that kind of confidence, I think we've seen the performances that can result from it.
You've spoken about how players might be feeling going into these final 2 games before the Euros, but how are you feeling the closer that Switzerland comes?
Yeah, I just, you know, I've been in football for long enough to know that it's these moments are rare, and these tournaments can't be sort of, when I say played down, we can't big them up either, but these are really exciting moments, and I just really enjoy standing alongside this team and watching them develop as a group and how they're coming together. It's all I think moments that I'll remember looking back, you know, and I always enjoy these games. They're fantastic tests for the team and for me and my staff, and I think again, wonderful preparation for the Euros. Yeah.
Hi, Rhian. You mentioned that obviously Sophie's 50-50, and you know that you thank Chelsea for their part in their sort of rehab. Do you feel that the fact she's at Chelsea, such a top club with facilities, best club in the country, do you think that maybe will perhaps work in your favour, given when the margins are so tight, as you say?
Yeah, I mean, like the 50-50, I know I'm going to be quoted on, but I'm trying to be as like, I have no idea kind of thing. But of course, when you have a player at a top club, that usually means their whole sort of four corner staffing is of a level, and that includes the medical. I think for some of my players that might be at smaller clubs with less resources, we need to step in more as an FAW to support, whereas in this case, we very much follow their lead and are comfortable with the training plan that they've so expertly put together and that's so clearly working for Sophie. So absolutely, it's been an advantage for us.
Yeah. Just one more thing. I mean, you mentioned that you said that you've got to make a decision where dreams come true, and others may not make the end of the journey that they've been on. I sort of wonder, sort of the responsibility. Do you sort of feel that responsibility that you've got to make those decisions, and is it maybe, I don't know, one of the hardest parts of your job?
It is the hardest part of my job. It's terrible, but it's also, that is the job, and I think I try really hard to be as clear as possible with players as early as possible without being cruel. And it's a fine line, because these players they're all in, they're fully committed. And I'm one person and it's one person's opinion. And it's why national team coaches should never be permanent, right? Every coach has a different eye for a player. So that's sort of how I try and position it, and it is the truth that if the players that won't make this journey, they weren't good enough for what I was looking for, not that they weren't good enough, and trying to take that personal piece out, but it is personal and it's terrible, and I've yet to do it right, because I don't know what right is, but it is absolutely that thing that looms over them, but also me, because I love these women, and I think so much I wish I could bring them all. They've all given so much. Whatever role they've played, they've done it expertly, and I'm not looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Last for questions.
Hi, Rhian. You've got experience of football in Canada and the US, two countries where women's football has long enjoyed strong support. Given your comment that Wales is culturally behind in this aspect, what do those countries do differently, and what lessons can Wales take from them to help close that gap?
Yeah, I did an interview yesterday where that was quoted back to me as well. So it's harsh, culturally behind is harsh. What I mean by that is that it hasn't been the norm across Wales for girls and young women to have the same opportunities as our boys and young men in school and in club. And in Canada and the US, these are newer countries, and we haven't had the history, that football history. So it is very much the men and women's youth has come up together. It hasn't been that the men was already established and the women are trying to find a foothold. But I've started to try and link it to school. If we were in school, or if you had a young boy and a young girl, if you were a parent to a boy and a girl, and the school said that your boy could take maths and science, but your girl couldn't, you would have a problem with that. But with sport, we've been quite comfortable in Wales with saying the girls can have access to potentially netball and field hockey, fantastic sports, but that's sort of their lane, and the boys have this lane. Where I'm a big advocate of saying these are all the sports, whichever sport they choose, I hope it's football, but equally, like, we want to have healthy adults here in Wales, boys and girls, and that comes from physical health, but also mental health, and we know that's linked to sport. So when I say that, it's because my mother did not have access to sport growing up in Wales. So how did she know what to fight for me? She never had it, and neither did my father. So it took moving to Canada to say, well, all girls, it's not because people don't care about their children. Everyone here in Wales, I've never seen anyone love family more than the Welsh people. That's why I know it's not being done on purpose. It just is how it's always been. And I'm coming with this annoying accent who's coming from abroad to just say, how can we work harder to make sure that our young girls are getting the same opportunities? And I think it happened late in England, but it's happened. There's been a huge movement. And I was obviously working for England and Team GB right before their Euro win, and you saw that movement, and I think it's happening here, which is really exciting. I think this is a moment in time for our young girls and our women.
Absolutely. And just quickly on the squad, you've spoken with admiration about Jess Fishlock, but you've also acknowledged that her retirement is something that the team will eventually have to face. With that in mind, how important is it to start introducing young players like Maya Griffiths into the squad and to make sure they're getting minutes on the pitch, especially given that they might not be given as many minutes with their clubs?
Yeah, I mean, retirement is terrible for athletes. I mean, it's been their entire life, and there's no right time. You either get it right, air quotes, and then you regret it for about a year because you think, oh, I could have kept playing, or you get it wrong and you're broken and you think I should have retired last. There's no one gets it exactly right, and it's a very personal decision, and Jess and all our more experienced players will have to go through that transition at the time that they feel is correct. Now, you know, they either get picked or they don't. There's a part that a coach plays, but equally that decision is a player's. But the role of a coach is to look ahead, to always be looking ahead. And it's natural that players get older. We're going with more experienced right now, get more experienced, and then you've got to look at those positions where maybe you've got to start looking at your depth chart. And we've been doing that since probably the first week of me on the job. I've come from youth sport. That was where I was trained in youth sport in Canada. I believe in development. As a national team, I'm not part of that development, but I am part of the opportunities. We're connected through the whole of the FAW in our youth system. And absolutely every single camp that I've had has had youth players on it for a reason. We're preparing for the long term, not the short.
Thanks everyone. We'll leave it there. Diolch yn fawr.
All right, yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Rhian. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Pardon? Oh, yeah, yeah.
Gareth will do some first.
Yeah,
So
I'll get
whenever
John-
you're
I'll
ready.
get John out as soon as we can.